Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mini Books Podcast with your host, Gloria and Rogan. And today we are excited to dive into Special Book with You. We picked this one because it has really important lessons to share, and we can't wait to talk about them. So let's get started. All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. We're going to be picking apart excerpts from his book.
And we're not just going to be talking about how we're all human. You'll actually have real takeaways, real insights into what makes people tick, including yourself.
It's like that feeling when someone does something totally out of line and you're just floored and their excuse is just, what? And Greene uses that as a starting point to show how much of what we think of as rational thought is really driven by, well, instinct.
And not just any instincts. We're talking ancient instincts. Like, think about hunter-gatherers. Your place in the tribe, being able to spot danger, fitting in so the group worked together. Those determine whether you survived. It's no wonder those are wired so deep in us.
So me stressing over whether I made a good impression at a party, that's not just me being extra, it's my inner caveman freaking out.
Basically, yeah. It's that need to know where we stand, to feel accepted. We even see it in chimpanzees. They have whole systems of hierarchy and power struggles.
Chimp politics. I knew it was real. But seriously, it's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really is. Greene even talks about how people used to think of this darker side of human nature, jealousy, needing validation, all that, as being possessed by demons. It's amazing how these ideas are timeless, just different packaging. But the thing is, Greene doesn't just describe those instincts. He digs into how they trip us up.
Oh, so it gets even better. What do you mean, trip us up?
Well, he says there are actually two levels of irrationality that everyone experiences.
Two levels of irrationality. Okay, now I'm really interested. Tell me more.
Okay, so there's this everyday irrationality. We've all been there. That impulse buy online you don't even need. Or saying the absolute wrong thing at the worst time. Totally irrational.
Oh, tell me about it. My credit card company has everyday irrationality on speed dial, probably. But, okay, there's another level.
Yeah, Greene calls it high-grade irrationality, and this is where it gets really interesting. This is the kind of irrationality that makes you wonder, how did they think that was a good idea? You know, when someone who seems smart makes a truly awful decision.
So bigger than just a bad shopping habit. We're talking like career-ending, relationship-imploding choices.
Exactly. Think about a CEO who runs their company into the ground because they won't listen to anyone. Or a politician, right? Throwing their entire career away for one lie that they could have been fact-checked on in like 2 seconds. High-grade irrationality is when we let our emotions totally override our common sense.
So how do we stop ourselves from falling into that trap? Because I'd be lying if I said I haven't let my emotions get the best of me a time or two. Or 10.
Oh, for sure. Greene says a big part of it is understanding our own biases. And one of the strongest is what he calls conviction bias. It basically means our brains are wired to think that passion equals truth.
Wait, really? So if someone really truly believes something, we're more likely to believe them, even if what they're saying makes no sense.
Yeah. It's a shortcut our brains take. When someone's really emotional, we pay attention to that. And not as much to, if what they're saying is true or not. Greene uses this example of people being more likely to follow a leader who's super passionate, even if their ideas are bad.
Okay, now that is kind of scary. Like, our brains are hardwired to fall for a good show, regardless of the content.
It's true. We respond to that raw energy, even if it's misplaced. It's like those charismatic cult leaders, They weren't always saying things that made sense, but they believed it, and people followed them.
Okay, so that's fascinating and terrifying. But if we know about this bias now, can we actually do anything about it? Or are we destined to be won over by anyone with enough charisma?
Greene says knowing about it is the first step. Once you're aware of it, you can start to really pay attention to your own reactions. Like, if you feel yourself getting swept up in someone's energy, just ask yourself, is this a good idea? Or am I just, obsessed with their voice?
So it's about having that little voice in your head going, wait a minute, is this legit?
Exactly. And that actually leads into another huge part of what Greene talks about. Learning to really read people. Because the truth is, we're all pretty good at hiding how we really feel.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all know someone who seems totally fine on the surface, but then you're like, wait a minute.
Right. It's like they're wearing a mask. But Greene says that even though we try to control how we present ourselves, there are these little tells that give us away.
Okay, so how do we learn to spot those? So how do we learn to spot those tells? It's like we need to become human lie detectors or something.
Well, Greene talks a lot about nonverbal cues. It's like our bodies instinctively give us away, even when we're trying to keep a poker face.
Give us an example. What kind of cues are we talking about?
Have you ever noticed that split second when someone rolls their eyes, but they try to hide it?
Oh, yeah. Like a subtle eye roll, then they quickly look away.
Exactly. Green says even a quick gesture like that can be a sign that they don't agree with you or they're annoyed, like a tiny little betrayal of their true feelings.
I'm totally guilty of that.
We all do it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And then there are things like a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. It's forced. Or the way they position their body. Like if they're not really feeling the conversation, they might angle themselves away from you without realizing it.
So we got to pay attention to body language. It's not just what they say.
It's a whole other layer of communication.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to check out our official YouTube channel, Mini Books Podcast, and subscribe for more great podcasts like this one.
Pay attention to those moments where someone's words and their body language don't match up. Those little inconsistencies can tell you a lot.
Okay, so it's not all about spotting deception. What about the positives?
Good point. Green also talks about how to recognize when you're genuinely connecting with someone. Like, have you ever noticed how you sometimes start mirroring someone's body language without realizing it?
Mirroring. Oh, you mean when you find yourself kind of subtly copying their posture?
Yeah. Or like if you and a friend both reach for your drinks at the same time. Green says those moments of synchrony are powerful signs of connection. Like your bodies are saying, hey, we're on the same page here.
That's so cool. It's like this whole hidden language we've got going on. But this brings up a big question. If we know all these secrets about human nature, how do we actually use that knowledge without turning into, master manipulators ourselves?
Right. How do we use this for good? Green talks about that too. He says that understanding human nature isn't about manipulating people. It's about influencing them ethically. And one of the best ways to do that is by what he calls loosening people up.
Loosening people up. That sounds more like something you do in a yoga class, not a social setting.
It sounds strange, but what it really means is that you create this feeling of warmth and validation. When people feel like they're being heard and respected, they naturally let their guard down.
So it's less about pushing our agenda, more about building that connection first.
Yes. And he tells this fascinating story about a therapist, Milton Erickson, who was working with this couple that was about to get divorced. The husband was really set on it, but they were both from a very religious background, so divorce was a huge taboo.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. How do you even begin to work with that?
So Erickson used language in this really clever way to bridge that gap between the husband wanting a divorce and his beliefs. He actually suggested they get a friendly divorce.
A friendly divorce.
Yeah, and it worked. By framing it that way, he validated how the husband was feeling,
Right.
but in a way that also aligned with his values.
That is brilliant. It's amazing what a difference the right words can make.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to understanding human nature, meeting people where they are, and speaking to them in a way that really resonates.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Green's book, The Laws of Human Nature, is definitely one to add to the reading list, folks. And listeners, as you go about your day, remember, knowledge is power. Use it wisely. Until next time, keep exploring. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to dive into more book insights and key learnings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mini Books Podcast, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're back every Sunday at 9 a.m. with new books and more to learn from. Until next time, take care, keep learning, and keep growing. Remember, this is Mini Books Podcast.